Okay, everybody, it says that my connection is live. So if you can hear me, just drop your name in the chat and let me know where you're joining us from. I see quite a few people are there already. Say hi, Karen and Trudy and Inez. Welcome. This is a supplement because I was supposed to be online on Thursday, but I've been having some technical issues. I'm trying to figure out how to get my microphone to connect. I may have to get a new microphone, maybe something that I can wear. That way when I turn towards the sewing machine, you guys can hear me. But anyway, if you're new, welcome. I always pin the templates into the chat, so if you did not get a template, you can go ahead and download that and follow us along. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to make a coffee cozy. So if you are new, please subscribe so that you can join us in the chat. And I appreciate you being here with me tonight. Hi, everybody. So Rowena's here, Lucinda and Judith. Hi, everybody. I can see you guys out there. All right, so let me show you what we're making today. So today we're making a coffee cozy. I'm going to show you how to make it in 2 different ways. This is a little bit slightly narrower coffee cozy, and this is the wider coffee cozy. So I'm just going to show you how to make that. And I've linked 2 templates. I have both of these templates in the chat. But the one that we're going to use is the basic one that I posted on the Facebook page, and it's just this right here. So the template, if you just look at it, measures about, let me grab it from this side so you guys can see. This template measures about 4 inches across, if you guys can see that, and it is about 11.5 wide. And so that's why I said you were going to need a piece of fabric or interfacing that was 5 by 12, and this is 5 by 12, and you can see that the template fits on there generously, and so that's the template that we're using. Okay, so let me show you what I've done. I'm going to show you 2 different ways. This one right here is what I call my coffee mug cozy, and so if you have a regular coffee mug, this one is mine, but it can get really hot when you're holding it like this, especially if you have a hot beverage. But I love a good ceramic mug. So this particular coffee cozy fits around your coffee mug just like this. And you can just take it and you can attach it to your coffee mug. And just like that, it will keep your hand from getting burned when you're holding a nice hot coffee. So that's the one method I'm going to teach you. And I pieced this using jelly roll scraps. So that's all that you need for this one. If you have buttons, you can use buttons. But if you want to use Velcro, you can use Velcro. Because I'm using this with a coffee mug, then I opted for elastic. But if you have like a Starbucks type coffee and you want to use Velcro and you're using it for that, you can use this method. And I'm going to show you how to do both. Okay? So let me show you what you're going to need for today. For the first one, the narrow coffee mug, you're going to need that template that I gave you. I traced it onto interfacing. I always like to print mine once and then make copies on newsprint. I just draw it just because printer ink is expensive. So you can just take and print it once and put it on your interfacing and then trace it. I've made a nice sturdy cardboard template for mine, and then I can just copy it over and over and over again. So I made mine with a nice sturdy cardboard, and then I can just trace it. The next thing that I did is I found the center of my template, right? And the template shows a seam allowance, right, of 1/4 of an inch. Then I found the center. Once I found the center, I drew these lines that were 2 inches apart, kind of following this angle, this curved angle of the template. So if you want to see how I did that, you just take and you just find the center of your template like this, like I did. Just measure it and find the center. And then once you find the center, you can just take a ruler and something that lets you measure in 2-inch increments starting from the center on out. So this is the 2. I'm going to put that 2 right where that center mark is, and then I'm going to follow the angle of the top, and then I'm just going to come down here, and then I'm going to move that over, and I'm following kind of the angle of that and I'm going to come like this. And so what that does is that creates a kind of a paper piece template that I can use that follows this curved angle so that my jelly roll strips end up following the curve. Okay, so that's the first thing that I'm doing, is just preparing that template. And like I said, line it up with the 2-inch mark right here and then turn it so that this line follows the angle of that top curve. Slide that over, do the same thing, and just turn it so that this 2 is right on the line and this follows the curve, and you should get something that looks like this, right? These are slightly wider, and then these on the ends are narrow, and that's okay. It looks just fine because that's what I have right here. So if you notice, I have these 2 strips and these 2 and then these 2, and they kind of follow this curve. Okay, so that's the first thing that you're going to do, is you're going to prepare your template. You're going to need one backing piece, just like this, right? And then you're going to also need strips. In my case, I have 5-inch strips. You need at least 8, depending on what you have. And so I just have these kind of patriotic looking strips, and that's what I'm going to be using. All right, so once I have my strips, I have a piece of interfacing, and I'm going to be using that in just a second. But first I'm going to set the interfacing aside. I'm going to set my backing aside, and I'm going to prepare my template. So let me grab all of this out of the way, and let me move this. And I'm going to use a little tool that some people use when they're foundation paper piecing. It's like a little scoring tool. It's like a little wheel, and I'm just going to mark these lines. So I'm just going to go through here. That'll make it easier for me to remove this paper, and it'll make it easier for me to see these lines. So I'm just going to score my paper. And this is just inexpensive newsprint. It's like $6 for a ton of these. It's like 300 came in a pack. And so now that I have it, I have these markings on both sides. They're like perforations, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and now that I see this perforation, this is the back side, I'm going to put 2 of these pieces right sides together. And I'm going to lay them this right side facing out like this, right sides together. And I'm going to put them about 1/4 of an inch past that center line. So I'm just going to fold that in half just so that I can see that center line. And I'm going to lay that so that I have like 1/4 of an inch seam, not a ton. And then I'm going to pin that on there. Only through one layer of the paper, right? And so I have one layer of the paper. Like I said, it doesn't have to be super exact, but just so that I have 1/4 of an inch seam at least hanging out. I pin it. Now I'm going to sew through that intersection following the lines out here. So I'm just going to follow this line, and I'm going to sew from end to end. I'm going to just stop right at this line on both sides, okay? Let me move all my junk out of here. And I'm going to sew right on that line. And if this is too much paper for you on your template, you see all this excess paper, you can trim some of that off. And I'm going to do that right now just because I don't want all that excess paper getting in my way. So I'm just going to trim it off, and I'm also going to trim it off the bottom because I don't need all of that. It'll just get in my way. And so as you can see, what I have is just my paper, and you can see through the light that I've got about 1/4 of an inch overlap. So now I'm going to sew from here down to here. Like I said, it doesn't have to be precise. You're just sewing from one end to the other. Not a big deal. And I'm going to bring that over so you can see it. And this is what it looks like, right, on the back side. So this is the side with the lines, and this is the opposite side. So I'm just going to pull that pin out, and I'm going to open it like this. And this extends above my pattern line, but that's okay. If you are working with printed paper, you're not going to want to press it, but this is newsprint, so I can do that to my newsprint. And so now I'm going to take it on this side, and you see where that crease is. That seam is a little bit narrower than I want, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that over here, and I'm going to make sure that I have at least 1/4 inch seam. So on this side, because it's so narrow, I'm going to sew just to the inside. And you don't have to be precise, you just have to make sure that you have at least 1/4 inch seam when this overlaps. So I'm just going to draw myself a new little line just to make sure that I'm sewing at least 1/4 inch seam right hanging out. And like I said, you have plenty with these strips. I always set aside like 8, that way if I boo-boo I have plenty, but just set aside about 8 strips. And now I'm going to sew along this line, making sure that I have at least 1/4 inch seam. And I like to pin it like this. If you want to, you can also add a piece to this side and sew 2 pieces on there at once, but you don't have to. So I can bend this back and see how much I have overlap. And this is barely over there, so I'm just going to come over here and make sure that I have at least 1/4 inch of a seam, and I'm going to go this way, and I can add another piece to that side. So I'm just going to add those 2 pieces on there, and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch down this way and 1/4 inch down the other, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, right? So lay these nice and flat. And now I'm going to sew on both of these lines right here. Can you guys see that? Let me move my thing down. So I'm going to sew straight down these 2 lines. Oh, congratulations! Lisa has a new grandbaby. Yes, welcome to the GMA Club. All right, friends, now that I have this, I'm going to sew it on both ends and save myself some time. Like I said, the lines that I drew were not super exact, but I did want to follow the contours of my curve just so that I had nice contours on my coffee mug cozy. Super easy. Nothing about this should be stressful. I'm going to pull those out, and I'm going to go ahead and trim. Oops, look, paper got stuck in there, but it doesn't matter. Just pull it off. So now I have this, and I'm going to push that out. Normally I don't push my strips or pull my strips, but this one I want it to be nice and tight. I want those strips to stretch out and go outward. This fabric has been pre-washed. So if you're wondering, yes, it has been pre-washed. And then I'm just going to cut this extra here, get rid of it, and cut this extra here and get rid of it, just so it's not in my way. All right, so now that I have these, right, I have at least 4 of these, I'm going to need to fill in these spaces. So I'm going to take one of these and flip it over on top, and I'm going to sew it. I can sew it from this side if I want to and just kind of follow the contour, or I can flip it and sew it from the other side. I just need to check it to make sure that I have at least 1/4 inch seam, and if I don't, oh, that's pretty close. So I'm going to sew just on the inside of this line, and that's fine right there. And then I'm going to lay this one on top and put a pin through that, just so that I'm sewing and not moving that around. So I'm going to sew from this side so it follows the contour, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to flip it over, check it. It's a little bit too narrow. And like I said, this is not an exact science. I'm just trying to get those so that they're mainly distributed and they're pretty centered. All right, let me take one of these. Let me just lay that on top and pin that into place. And so that, now that I know where my lines are going, I'm going to the inside of this one, to the inside of that one. That's going to give me this right here. And so it's going to be a little bit wider, and then it gets a little bit narrower as it goes out, and that's okay. So now I'm going to sew on both of these lines over here and then press the entire unit open. All right, and so now that I have that, my outer piece is done. All right. Don't worry about being late to our live streams. You can always catch the replay. That's the beauty of this. I have a couple of extras that I'm not going to need, but I can save them for another one. All right. So now that I open this, and this is what it looks like, I am ready to go on to my next step. This is my patriotic cozy I'm working on. Okay, so now that I have it like this, now I can trim all the way around. And so I'm just going to take this, and like I said, I made a sturdy cardboard template, and if I'm very careful, I can actually use my rotary cutter with this very heavy cardboard. See how thick it is? This very heavy cardboard template I made. If I'm extra careful, I can just kind of lay it on the side and follow it all the way around. So I can trim that off. I can rotate this around. This is why I like using a smaller mat, because it allows me to rotate my stuff. If you tilt your wheel outward away from your cardboard ever so slightly, it allows you to run along the edge of that cardboard without cutting it. And so I'm just going to kind of cut along here and make sure that I'm going all the way through. Just take your sweet time. Don't cut your cardboard too much. And make sure you cut all the way through. Sometimes my wheel, if I don't push hard enough, there's grooves will not go all the way through. So just make sure that you have a sharp rotary cutter when you're doing this kind of stuff, and that you're going all the way through the layers. And maybe it's the big time. Pull out the big boy. Change your blades on your rotary cutter often, because if you don't, you end up with blades that won't go through stuff. All right, so let me get rid of that. And I've got a little segment over here, and I'm just going to use my rulers that actually work right. All right. So now that I have this unit, this is what I want. I'm going to move all these out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and tear out my paper, just like this, super easy. It's perforated, so it comes right off. And if you use newsprint, it's super easy to pull off. Just kind of flatten it. You're going to have some weird seams, and that's okay. This is not a quilt, and it doesn't have to have precision. Like I said, pull that right off. Crease it with your finger. Pull it off. Crease it with your finger. Pull it off. Super easy. Comes right off if it's newsprint. All right. A little bit of newsprint stuck in there, and now it's done. And if these seams really, really bother you, you can always trim them if you want to. Just a little bit, but only if you're OCD and those things bother you. Me, doesn't bother me if they're extra wide. Okay, so now you're going to have to decide which way to press all of your seams. I want all of my seams going in the same direction so that I know where to do my quilting lines. Yes, using a new rotary blade makes me happy. So I'm going to take all of these and I'm just going to push them all in one direction. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's going to make it easier when I get ready to quilt this. All right, I'm going to quilt this using a little piece of batting. And so I'm going to take batting. That's the same size as my template. And I'm going to lay this down. Now, you can use fusible batting if you want. It's not necessary. But I'm going to use a little bit of a glue stick on mine just to make it stick. And then I'm going to hit it with an iron and it'll hold that baby right in place. So I'm just going to flip this over. And if you notice, it sticks already. And I'm just going to put a dab of glue. This is 100% washable school glue. So it has to be like ultra washable school glue. And then I'm going to take this piece of batting and I'm going to lay it on there, center it, slide it across, and then you can just hit it with the iron. Just like that. The heat from the iron allows that glue to stick. This is pre-washed fabric, so when I wash this, after I've used it a few times, it won't shrink or pucker on me. And so now we're going to go ahead and sew it to the background. So I have this piece right here, and I'm going to put some interfacing on this piece. So I'm going to take this piece right here that is the exact size of my template, same exact size, just like this, including the seam allowances, and I'm going to put, and that's a tiny bit bigger. No, it's the same size. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fuse that. I'm going to make sure that my bumpy side for my interfacing is touching the back. And I'm going to flip this over. Try not to waste that. See if I can get a jelly roll strip out of that. And I'm going to flip it over, and I press it always from the front because I use a super hot dry iron. I want that interfacing to stick really, really well without melting. And I glued on that side. And now I can literally just take my scissors and just trim right along the edge of that interfacing. To quilt your top, because this is the backing and it's got a little backing in the front, just like a little miniature quilt, you can choose to do free motion quilting on it if you want to. I'm just going to do some quick lines across mine, and I'm going to show you in just a second how I do that. But in the meantime, I'm just going to trim this right along that edge of that interfacing so that it's interfaced right out to the very edge, just like that. So now I have a backing piece that has interfacing. I have a front piece, and it has a piece of batting. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I pressed all of these. If you notice, they're all going this way. So I'm going to stitch on the left-hand side so that I'm sewing that piece of fabric that's been pressed that way. I'm sewing on the fabric side. So let me go ahead and sew that really quick. Yes, if you have an embroidery machine, you can put somebody's name across there and then make it, so you can make it as a solid piece, embroider their name, and then cut out your template. Rowena, yes, you can use diluted school glue. So if you have like regular Elmer's school glue, you dilute it and then you can brush it on and you do the same thing. But I use that as a basting tool. All right, so now I'm going to sew it. Like I said, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to sew along those seams really fast. Just so that my batting doesn't come off of my piece. And then I don't even come off of here or break my thread. I just keep sewing. I'm going to go down this side. Just going to kind of hold my thread. And I sew in opposite directions just to keep my little arc from getting distorted. And then I pull this away. Doesn't take any time at all to quilt this little guy. This is what I love about these little projects. Super easy. Normally I take my time on this, but this is working out okay. So now that I have it, right, and I go off the end, I'm just done. All right, now that I have this piece, I'm going to trim all these weird threads off. And as you noticed, I started on one side, went down the opposite side. So I went down this way, up this way, down this way, up this way. And that just keeps my pieces from getting distorted. This has been stitched through all of those lines. And that'll just keep my piece, allow my piece to keep its shape through repeated washings. Okay, so now I need elastic because this one wraps around my coffee mug, so I'm going to use elastic. So for mine, I'm probably going to use a little bit of elastic. I need at least 3 inches, but you can do 4. And so you need at least 3 or 4 inches. Trim that off. And your elastic should be 1/4 inch elastic, super stretchy. This elastic, I don't even know what kind of elastic that is. It's like undergarment elastic or something. And so now I'm going to make sure that on one side I have my little elastic loop. And so I want it to loop so that my loop lays like this. So I'm curling it both so that it makes this nice loop. Do you see that? And I could pin that in place, but I just kind of want that to loop like this. And I want to make sure to allow about 1/2 inch inside that seam allowance. And so you can glue it in place, you can pin it in place, you can sew it in place. But I'm just going to do a little dab of glue right on that seam allowance right there. And that'll hold it in place for me just long enough for me to sew. So I'm going to push that there. I'm going to give it a little heat, and that heat will allow it to just stick in there. Oops, wrong way. Sorry, friends. This way. Back to the drawing board. Friends, I get angly challenged sometimes, and I'm working upside down, so when I look up, everything is upside down. The loop goes to the inside this way, friends. Caught myself. All right, so now that I have it there, push it down, hit it with a little heat. That glue holds it in place so it doesn't wiggle around on you. If you notice, those are flat and it makes a loop. You could use a hair elastic. Yes, Linda, if you have hair elastic, you could do that. I don't use hair elastic because I don't have it. I'm short. My hair is really short, and so I don't have it in the house. But I do have a ton of this elastic, so this is what I'm using. Now that I have this, and I've got all these threads, get them out of your way. Trim all the excess threads before you start sewing because they're a nightmare to pull out if you sew this together later. Okay. So once you've trimmed all the little weird threads, you've got this loop facing to the inside. I've got it temporarily glued. I'm going to lay my backing fabric that's already been interfaced, and I'm going to lay it right here. You can clip these into place like this. I always put a little clip down here where the elastic is so that I don't forget that it's there and accidentally tug it out. And then you can just put a couple more clips. And I'm going to sew this. I'm going to leave this side open, and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch up, 1/4 inch across, and 1/4 inch down. If you want to do a little bit more than 1/4 inch, you can do that, but you're just going to make sure that this is even all the way around. Like I said, you can use regular pins, you could clip it, and I'm just trying to make sure that this is nice and even all the way around. And I'm going to clip it on both sides just so that this is not wiggling around on me and getting all twisted. Okay, so now that I have my little sandwich, like I said, I'm going to leave this side open. This is the side with the elastic, and I'm going to sew all the way around. Thank you, Shirley. All right, so let me show you how to sew this really fast. I come down here. In this case, normally I don't backstitch, but here I will. So I'm going to come in about 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to backstitch, because that's where it's going to get turned. I have a 1/4 inch foot, so I'm just following the edge. I'm going to get to the end. And then I'm going to pivot, like I said, about 1/4 inch away from the edge. And then I'm going to come in, pull that clip, and I'm going to run over my elastic. I'm going to backstitch a couple of times where that elastic is. And I'm going to flip this around. Make sure you're leaving a 1/4 inch seam, and you're just going to pivot, pick up that needle, and come around. With your hands, when you're sewing, try to keep it as flat as you can and keep it from twisting. See how it's laying perfectly flat? That's what I want. Now when I get to the end, I'm going to stop about 1 inch away, and I'm going to back tack, and then I'm going to sew all the way out. All right, so now that I have this, I'm going to start trimming off these corners, and I'm going to get rid of the excess. I can get rid of some of the excess batting, but it's fine. Just a little bit of the excess, not a lot, just the batting only, where I want those corners to be flat. This you're not going to trim just yet, but now we're going to flip this the other way. So now that I have that elastic in there, I'm going to stick my hand in there like this, and I'm going to pull it away from each other and stuff it into itself. Then you're going to use a paintbrush or a chopstick or something that's got a soft end. This thing's got a soft end. I'm going to stick it in there, and I'm going to push just like that. I'm going to until I can see my elastic sticking out. Once I have it, I'm going to pull it. And then I'm going to want to run a chopstick. So if you have a long chopstick, want to run that into the corners, just like that, and push those out. And that's why I trim them back, so that I get a nice kind of rounded corner. And then I'm going to take and run that chopstick along that seam like this, because that's what's going to open that seam so that it lays nice and flat. And so you're just using that chopstick to kind of push with your fingers so that it opens up, right? See how this one's all puckered? You're going to do the same thing to the other side, and you're just going to push that chopstick in there, and you're going to use your fingers to kind of pull it like this. You're going to run that along that edge, and as you pull it, it straightens it out. My stitch length on my machine is 1.9 while doing this, because I want a nice tight stitch. And as I'm pushing it out, it's getting the shape that I want. And I'm going to take and I'm going to give it a good hard press. If you want to spritz it with water, you can. This fabric has been pre-washed, so it's not going to shrink on me. And so by spritzing it with water, it makes the fabric more malleable. And you can just press it with your hand exactly where you want it. Give it a little press, and look at how nice and flat that is. So now that we have our end, right, you're going to take and you're going to tuck that in. So you're going to take and you're going to fold it down towards the batting like this, about 1/4 of an inch all the way around. Usually I come to the side and I push it down like this, push it to one side and fold it down. It just makes it easier. And then you can pin it right at that corner. Once you get that corner started, it makes the rest of this process easier. And just take and you pin that. Then you're going to go on the opposite side. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to push it down towards one side and then fold it. And this is why I wanted you to back tack a little bit away from that edge. And so you're pushing it with your fingers, you're smoothing it, and you're going to get a piece that's basically even with that other piece. See, it's smaller, and then you're going to pin that corner. And what you're going to do is you're going to get it closed. And so you can clip it, you can pin it, it doesn't matter what you do, but hold these down, and then we're going to sew that closed just like this, okay? And because this is such a bulky thing, on my machine, I always use a denim needle. I use a 100. I use a big needle when I'm sewing this. I can go ahead and top stitch it all the way around if I wanted to, but I like the look without it being top stitched, so I just like it like this. The only thing I top stitch is that, so I'm going to go top stitch that closed really quick. And you'll see my little handy dandy patriotic cozy I'm going to use for drinking tea. And when you start this, if you noticed I didn't pin exactly in the corner, you're going to start very slow, and I have a 100 needle on there. You're going to lift your presser foot, lay that down where that bulk is, just like that, and you're going to start stitching very, very slowly. Once you hear that needle catch, then you pull your pin and you hold it tight with your finger. And you push those layers down so that they stay down. And you're sewing about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And then when I get to the other side, I'm going to pull my pin and then go very slow over that intersection. And then if you want to back tack, you can back tack right there. But it's not necessary. All right. I'm going to trim that off. And this one is ready. So now all I need to do to this lady I can go ahead and trim this off really close to that edge and just trim those. I use a little bit of fray check sometimes on the ends of my threads if I want to wash it repeatedly. Just going to trim that. And then it looks like that. So now you have to measure your coffee cup. If this is the coffee cup I'm using, right, and you have this elastic here, you kind of have to decide where is that button going to go. And my suggestion is the button should go centered in here, or maybe a little bit towards this first seam. So if you notice, this one is centered. It just depends on the thickness of your mug. For me, this one was in the center, and my elastic just kind of wraps around it just like this. And it holds it on there perfectly nice and snug without being too tight. And like I said, this narrow one fits perfectly around a small coffee cup, just like that. All right, so that's the first one. If you want to make the wider version, like this one with Velcro, and this fits around a venti, which is a Starbucks venti, you're going to take the template that I gave you, and you're going to interface a straight piece of fabric, a solid piece of fabric, and you're going to trim a 1/2 inch bigger all the way around. And your stitch line is going to be the outside. In the other one, our stitch line was 1/4 inch to the inside of this. In this case, we're going to stitch directly on the outside. And so I've pre-prepared this, right? This is interfaced. I have a piece of batting. That's the size. A little tiny bit bigger than that interfacing, right? And this is going to go on the other side. So I'm going to sandwich this. So I have this. And then I'm going to find a piece of backing fabric. So this is 5 inches by 12 inches. And I'm just going to press it. I'm going to interface it like I did the other piece. You don't have to double interface, I just like it. And I want to make sure that I have enough room all the way around for that big wide seam allowance. When I interface it, I put the glue to the wrong side of the fabric and I press from the front, and that keeps my interfacing from melting. Now that it's on there, I can just give it a trim. I'm going to trim this batting so that it's the same size. I'm going to use some sharp scissors as my template. And that's the size of my template. So I'm going to make sure that my batting is smaller than what I'm sewing right here. Just like that. And this is just slightly bigger than the last one I made. And this is to go around like those Starbucks venti size coffee cups. So if you go to Starbucks and you drink a venti and you want something to wrap around instead of those little cardboard things, this is what you show up with. So that should fit, and it does. It's the same size. And so now we're going to make a sandwich. So let me go ahead and just trim this nice and big. This has an excess, and that's fine. It's a 1/2 inch seam allowance is what I've given myself. And I'm just going to trim a 1/2 inch around. Like I said, I'm just kind of eyeballing the 1/2 inch, but I just want to make sure that I kind of follow the curve, not too ridiculously wide. And I've given myself a 1/2 inch all the way around. So now that I have a 1/2 inch all the way around, like I said, this is relaxing because it's not perfection. It's just kind of hand sewing a little bit. So I have one layer of fabric. This is the template We're going to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance to that template. We're going to cut a piece of batting the same exact size, and then we have a front piece, and then we did a little elastic loop on this one as well. And so I'm going to layer all of this together. And I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to pin through all of these layers. So I'm going to use these pins, and they're just going to be like this. And I'm going to pin through all of these layers. And this is why I use a denim needle on my sewing machine. This, you're going to want to make sure that you capture that loop. All right. And one more. Extra long pins are easier for this than short ones. All right. Now that I've prepared my sandwich, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to sew on the outside, just barely along this edge. I'm going to follow the interfacing, right? And I'm going to leave my batting in there, and I'm just going to follow the interfacing. I can glue it in place so that it stays. So I'm going to take a little bit of glue. It will stay where it needs to stay. It's not necessary, but if you don't want your stuff to move around, you can just glue it down like this. Hit it with a little bit of an iron. Just like that. Glue this into place, and that just allows it to stick so that it doesn't move around on you. Little glue sticks are handy dandy little critters. Now I'm going to pin that, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to sew right along that edge. This is the side with the elastic. This is the side that I'm going to leave open, okay? All right, friends, tell me what you guys have been working on. I see that some of you guys have been busy little bees. Are you guys working on the mystery stars? Are you working on another jelly roll project or something else? All right. So here I'm running just along this edge. I'm not capturing the batting at all so that it's not going to be in my seam. But I want that batting to stay where it's at. Okay, on this side where the elastic is, I'm going to go ahead and sew a 1/16 of an inch along the edge of that batting just so the batting doesn't come out, okay? When I get to my elastic, I'm going to double back over it. And so I literally just barely sewed along that edge just to capture my batting. All right. And now I'm going to sew along the other edge. And I'm going to pull it out of there. All right, super fast. This one is a really fast one. So now I'm going to take my pins out, and I'm going to go ahead and trim the excess on this side, trim the excess on this side, and I'm going to go ahead and trim a little bit of that excess on this side. I stitched just barely on that to make sure that it's on there. And now I'm going to flip this one around, get rid of your pins. If you want to trim some of this excess, you can, but you don't have to. You're going to stick your finger in there and just turn it inside out. You're doing the mystery stars. Yes, these are going to be cute little stocking stuffers. My grandchildren love hot cocoa. They love warm chocolate, and so these are going to be for their hot cocoa mugs. I'm going to embroider some with their names on them. As you guys saw me playing Bobbin Chicken the other day, I was embroidering names. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing I did before. This one is easier. And like I said, if you want to embroider names, this is the perfect method. And this one, you just poke out with your chopstick. You don't have to top stitch this one at all if you don't want. But because the batting is not as far as the edge of this is going to make it really easy to turn under. You're just going to take your chopstick, you're going to push out all of these seams like this. And you're doing that to make sure that it's not getting a weird pleat. You're going to press it. Like I said, this is a good time to spritz it with a little bit of water if you want. You're just going to bring that iron. That one needs poked out. So I'm going to stick that chopstick in that corner and push it out. And give it a nice good press. And I think my sister's going to love her Hello Kitty coffee cozy. So now I'm going to turn this under. Because there's batting, it makes it easier, and then you're just going to fold it in. Super easy. You're going to take and push that down around that batting on both sides, tucking that batting in, and then you're going to pin it in place. Super easy to do because you don't have all that bulk. And you're going to sew. Just going to pin it closed. About an inch from the edge, maybe a ½ inch right there. And so now I can just sew this. I can add my button. So I can choose maybe this little hot pink button. No, it's red, so I'm only going to need a red button. Hello Kitty's bow is usually red. But I can either use a pink or a red button or even a black button. And on this one, I'm just going to put the button about an inch in, and that way when I wrap it around my coffee mug, it goes like this. And this one is used around those Starbucks coffees. All right, so if you are ready to make your own coffee cozies, don't forget to go ahead and post your pictures. This is what mine looks like. I made this one and I did decorative stitching on the end. I did Velcro on this one. So if you wanted to make yours with Velcro, you can. And this one is just kind of green. I didn't feel like chopping up that fabric, so I did it like this. Let me know if you want to do more of these things. In the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be spending time with my grandkids. My kids are going to go on a 10-year anniversary cruise, and so I'm not going to be live. I'm going to pre-record several videos and upload them. So if you don't see me live, don't get confused. I will be back. Nothing has happened to me. I just have grandmother duties calling me. All right, everybody, don't forget to make your coffee cozies. These turn out super cute. Make them in a variety of colors. Share them with your friends. And you can, like I said, you can make either way. You can either make the one that goes around a coffee cup like this, or you can make the bigger one that goes around your venti. All right, everybody, you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you like it, and share what you're making in the comments. I love you guys. Have a wonderful time. I will see you guys in a couple of weeks because I'm going to be uploading pre-recorded content so that I can babysit my grandkids and have a grand old time. All right, everybody, have a good one.